The original idea for this story began with Siobhan Dowd, who died in 2007 from breast cancer. After she died, Patrick Ness was approached by her editor to turn her work into a book, which ultimately resulted in A Monster Calls. A Monster Calls was published in 2011 and released as a film also written by Patrick Ness in 2016. The book won both the Carnegie and Greenaway medals as the year's best young adult book published in the UK. I also think it's one of the most important stories that boys could ever hear. The story revolves around 13-year-old Connor O'Malley, whose mother is in the late stages of terminal cancer. Connor is isolated at school, facing the ongoing physical bullying of a group of bigger boys. He resents the stern parenting of his grandmother and the distant support from his remarried father. As the book puts it, he calls a monster. The yew tree beside his house transforms into a monster that promises him 3 stories in exchange for his own, an ultimate truth that has to come from within himself.
I will tell you 3 stories, and when I finish my stories, you will tell me a 4th.
I don't know anything about stories.
You will tell me a 4th, and it will be the truth.
What are you talking about?
This truth that you hide, the truth you dream. You will tell me your nightmare.
No.
Yes, that will be your truth.
And if I don't?
The layers of story are what make this such an important piece of writing. Because at first glance, A Monster Calls is a story about anger. At second glance, it's about fear. But at its heart, this is a story about a boy. It's about understanding and expressing the full depth of your emotions, even in the midst of incredible hardship, and because of that, it has a timeless lesson for boys who are entering adolescence. Throughout the story, Connor has a glimmering anger in the pit of his stomach. It becomes perhaps most visible in how he ends up responding to the bullies who've been tormenting him at school, particularly the ringleader Harry. Connor is quite isolated at school, which is both self-imposed and exacerbated by the fact that his ex-friend told the whole school about his mother's cancer, and now no one seems to know how to treat him except for Harry, who corners him with physical violence on an almost daily basis.
Careful there, O'Malley. You might fall.
Are you drunk or something?
Like many bullies, Harry couples physicality with emotional manipulation. "Here's the hardest hit of all, O'Malley," he tells Connor in the book. "Here's the very worst thing I can do to you."
Goodbye, O'Malley. I no longer see you. Now you're invisible to me, too. Hoping Mum gets better.
The story intertwines Connor's complex feelings, Harry's taunting indifference, and the monster's promise to make them see.
There was once an invisible man who had grown tired of being unseen. It was just that people had become used to not seeing him. One day, the invisible man couldn't stand it anymore. He kept wondering, if no one sees you, are you really there at all?
What did the invisible man do?
He called for a monster.
I'm not invisible! I'm not invisible!
If you want to be seen, O'Malley, this is not the best way.
I'm not invisible! Can you hear me? I'm not invisible!
School rules dictate immediate exclusion.
This is perhaps when Connor's anger gains the most clarity, but it simmers throughout the story, coming to a boil when he smashes his grandmother's sitting room, for example, or lashes out at his father.
Why did you come?
Connor, wait.
It's so present that when his mother begins to tell him the truth about her experimental cancer treatment not working, she speaks to his anger as a way of speaking to him.
It's okay that you're angry, Con. It really is. I'm pretty angry too, to tell you the truth. But Con, one day, if you look back and you feel bad for being so angry, you couldn't even speak to me. You have to know that that was okay. That I knew. Because I know everything you need to tell me without you having to say it out loud. And if you need to break things, by God, you break them. Break them good and hard. And I'll be right there, Con.
You would be wrong to think, however, that this is a story about anger at all. Lewis McDougall's nuanced portrayal of Connor's feelings lets us see that there is a lot more going on inside.
Why am I going to stay with Grandma? Are you going back to the hospital?
In his book, How to Raise a Boy, writer and researcher Michael Reichert includes an apt description of boys' anger. When a boy feels threatened, he writes, his angry reactions are more about fear. Fear as a response to change and fear of loss. In most cases, it is often easier to react angrily than to feel one's vulnerability. Connor is uniquely vulnerable in this story, and each of those instances of anger, whether it's his response to Harry, his grandmother, father, or mother, he's in a position of helplessness. What makes that even harder is that in the overarching context of his mother's sickness, he can sense their helplessness as well. Rather than punishing him, the adults in his life do their best to treat him with compassion.
I can see how upset you are.
I didn't mean to. I don't know what happened.
The worst things happen at sea.
What does that mean? Aren't you going to punish me?
What could possibly be the point in that?
Early on in the book, he misses class, for example, and is only faced with his teacher's kindly mode. He knew right then, Ness writes, that he could probably stay out there all day and no one would punish him for it, which somehow made him feel even worse.
I have come to get you, Connor O'Malley. Why don't you run, Connor O'Malley? Why don't you run for your mother?
You leave her alone! I'm not afraid of you!
Use your imagination, Connor O'Malley. What do you see?
This is perhaps the most important part of the emotional depth in this story, because he's not just angry and he's not just scared. Part of the reason that he's brought so low by these moments of compassion is that he believes he doesn't deserve their compassion. The feelings feeding the monster stem from a well of guilt, because deep down, in a place he hasn't even really admitted to himself, he wants it to be over. Some part of him wants his mother to die. That's why we have this dramatic scene reenacting the nightmare of losing his grip on her, in which the monster demands that he tell his truth.
Connor! You were the one who called me, Connor O'Malley.
I called you! It was to save her! It was to heal her!
I did not come to heal her.
Yes, you did!
I came to heal you.
Me! I'm the one who needs healing! How many times do I have to tell you? My mum's the one who... Ah!
nightmare before it is too late. Yes, tell me, Connor. Tell me the truth.
It'll kill me if I do!
It will kill you if you do not. Speak the truth. The truth, Connor O'Malley. Tell me the truth, boy. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. Speak the truth. Speak the truth, boy.
I want it to be over! I can't stand knowing that she'll go. I want it to be finished. I let her fall. I let her die.
Once Connor's able to start facing these conflicting and heartrending emotions, he's able to have the most important conversation of the story. The monster says to him, "It does not matter what you think, because your mind will contradict itself 100 times each day. You wanted her to go at the same time you were desperate for me to save her, and your mind will punish you for both." But how do you fight it, Connor asks. How do you fight all the different stuff inside?
What you did just now, you speak the truth.
That's all.
You think it's easy. You were willing to die rather than speak it.
It's only with this level of clarity that Connor is able to face himself and be present in the loss of his mother. This is the reason that A Monster Calls carries such an invaluable lesson for boys, because we get to see him wrestle with his emotions and end in a place of self-knowledge and expression that shows the human depth of boys beyond the masculine stereotypes, of Clint Eastwood vulnerability, for example, or Marvel superheroes' self-sacrifice.
I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go.
And it's important that it's still a place of loss. As Connor's father tells him, stories don't always have happy endings. And just like Connor's, our lives are messy and unpredictable and heartbreaking. That's why it matters for boys to see other boys experiencing their emotional range, because that's how boys build resilience. It would be terrible, Ness writes about Connor at the end of the book. It would be beyond terrible, but he'd survive. He knew he was going to get through it.